Hello and welcome to TheHagwon After Hours. I'm Joon, joined, today's actually just us two.
Yes.
Joined today by Deanna Park. Deanna, how are you doing?
Hello.
It's
Thank you
just
for
us.
having me.
It's just me and you.
It's just us.
There's no one else supervising. I
We
can say
have
whatever
no
I
one
want.
to lean on.
But today we're here to talk, and it's just us because we're here to talk about us for a
Yes.
change.
Sure.
Usually there's someone else we're talking about or a thing like the test we're talking about. Today,
Right.
I think because we're in our kind of college tour series
Mm-hmm.
in the month of August, we want to talk about our college experiences and how we got to our colleges, what we did in college, and consider this a way to write your why for us Brown and NYU essays. Because we're going to talk about kind of the intricacies, the fun things, what's like there academically, what we experienced, and also kind of how we got to those colleges or more what we did in high school to prepare for that.
Right.
And so, I just graduated college. Deanna went to NYU.
I graduated class of 2019.
So you'll have a good range of experiences, and
Sure.
we're just here to have fun today.
Right. I think the point of us recording this video today is one that Joon and I have very different college experiences. They're both East Coast schools, but wildly different schools. We studied, we had a different trajectory during our 4 years. Interestingly, we went to the same high school, not at the same time, but we went to the same high school. And we have different experiences of navigating kind of the cycle, admission cycle, applying, testing, everything. You took ACT, I took SAT.
Mm-hmm.
It was very different. So these are kind of like two different trajectories of getting into college and graduating that might be interesting for certain students. And we hope you can at least take away some helpful information. Supplements are starting to come out. Common App prompts are getting released. People are starting to think about college lists and freaking out. This is our episode that hopefully you don't have to be so scared. Maybe we can answer some helpful questions. If there are any other things that maybe we can talk about that might help alleviate your stress, concerns, let us know. We'll definitely want to talk about those things as well.
More on Brown and NYU on this episode of TheHagwon After Hours. It's just me and you.
It's just us.
You're stuck with me now. It's weird because I'm staring at you and you're staring at me, and we are almost never looking at each other.
We're never looking at each other.
But so
Here we are.
We went to the same high school.
We went to the same high school.
Seoul Foreign School. Building character, inspiring excellence.
I have no idea.
Something like that since 1912.
Yes, since
14?
1912.
12.
1912.
So I think you graduated. You were there from 20. No,
I graduated in 2012.
2012. Okay.
I graduated in 2012. Why I graduated college in 2019 we'll get to later.
Okay.
But I graduated high school in 2012. We were the Centennial class.
Yes.
For context, Joon and I both went to an international school here in Seoul, South Korea. We are both predominantly English speakers. Like, that's my first language. Is English your first? Yeah.
It is.
For both of us. So we are not exactly like Korean students seeking an education at a U.S. university. We're more Americans looking to.
Well, I never asked about your background. So we'll talk about our high school and what we did in high school. But your background.
My background.
Before high school.
Right. So kind of growing up. So I am second-gen Korean American. I'm originally from LA. Hey, West Coast, Best Coast. There we go.
We'll dispute that later.
I was born in LA. I was living there. Our whole family was there. And I started elementary school, and my parents told us that we were moving to Korea for 3 years because of my dad's work, and then we were going to come back. So we didn't sell our house. We didn't sell our car. I left all my summer clothes in LA. We moved to Korea, and they still live here. So that was like a 3-year stint in Korea. We ended up staying here. So I went to international school here, was in kind of like the U.S. school system for my entire life. But I mostly grew up here. And yeah, that's basically kind of the big picture.
Yeah, kind of similar. I was born in Korea. When I was 2, my dad moved. Our family moved to Denver because he wanted to do an MBA in the States, a master's of business, and he thought it was going to be he gets his degree and he gets out. He somehow got a job there, so we stayed for another 2 or 3, which turned into like 5 or 6. So I spent pretty much all of my childhood up until 4th grade in the States. So I went to public school.
That's why you're a Nuggets fan.
Yes. Carmelo Anthony was my guy.
Okay.
The Lakers broke our hearts in 2009, the conference
Hey.
finals. And after that, we went back to Korea. I went to international school, so I went to SFS from 5th grade to high school graduation.
Right. So we both graduated from the same high school, slightly different programs, I think, when I was in high school and when you were in high school.
Well, let's talk about academics then
Yeah,
first. So
yeah.
you said different academic program.
Yeah, I think so. So for context, Joon and I both went to an IB school. IB is a little different from the AP because all of the courses are 2-year programs. So those are the courses that make up your junior and senior year. That's the same. I believe that you did IGCSE,
Yes.
9th and 10th grade. So when I was in high school, we did not have IGCSE. And the school kind of went manic because so what happened is because IB is 2 years, it's junior and senior year. If you wanted to take any AP courses, you had to do them sophomore year. So we were a bunch of like high achieving Korean Americans in a single school taking APs in sophomore year and then doing 2 years of IB. So that's what the program was like for me. And do you want to talk about what we did in IB, what we studied?
Yeah. Did you take APs?
I took AP US History, and then because I did IBs, I sat AP exams. So I took the AP French exam. I think I took AP Lit. All went well.
What did you do for IB then?
IB,
Also, for context, IB is like a very rigorous program in itself. You do an essay for every class.
Right.
You do a big, like, 20-page essay.
Right. You have to do the extended essay.
Yeah.
It's a whole thing. We both did the IB diploma
Yeah.
program. I did IB diploma as well. My higher levels, so you have to take higher levels and standard levels, a total of 6 courses. I took higher level French, theater, and in my day, it was called English. I know now it's like literature or language and literature. In my day, it was just English. And I also took bio, math, and business. So that's what I studied. I don't really remember, and this is partly what I tell my students, I don't remember what my IB scores were. I know a couple of my courses, what the scores were for them, but overall I have no idea. All I remember GPA-wise, I was always high honor roll pretty much all 4 years of high school, so it's like top 10% of the student body-ish. That's ballpark where I was. So that's like just academic stats-wise, that's where I was.
It's nice to talk to another humanities, social science person after going
Weeks
through
of
a
STEM.
pre-med and an engineer. I did high-level history, literature, and biology. And then I did standard level math, Korean, and global politics, which was a new IB course at the time.
Yes.
And I remember my stats. It's not been that long.
Okay.
So did you get something called a predicted score, which
Right.
is the score you send to colleges? I had an IB 45, which is
a perfect
which is a perfect score. And but I did not end up getting a perfect score. That doesn't really matter at the end of the day for U.S. admissions.
No.
But outside of, so yeah, I'm a pretty good student, I'd say.
Yeah.
I wasn't a top, I don't think I was in the top 10, but I was probably in the top 5% in my class.
Nice. Well, I mean, we're gonna talk about the cycle later, but I have
Yeah.
a feeling that the only reason you didn't get a perfect 45 is because after a certain point you knew that didn't really matter for Brown.
Well, that and also I didn't deserve it. Well, no, not.
Question mark?
It was more that I was good at negotiating. I was good at currying favor with my teachers
Okay.
and trying very hard in class.
Okay. Which I think if you've seen any of the Hannah episode at Hannah at MIT, you would know that being friendly with teachers will take you very far.
Not just friendly, just treat them as human beings.
Yeah.
And
Be polite, be courteous.
they'll bump you up the decimal grade because they
I agree.
Just be nice to them.
I agree.
It's a stressful time, and a lot of times I think you don't have a lot of patience with them, especially if things don't really go your way. But in the long term, it matters. And also, you need letters of recommendation.
Right.
But extracurriculars.
Extracurriculars.
What did you do outside of school?
I was a hardcore theater kid.
Yes.
Like a hardcore.
So differentiate what it means to be a theater kid and a hardcore theater
A
kid.
hardcore theater kid is somebody who's basically all of their time outside of like the classes from 8 to 3 or 7 to 3, whatever high school timetables are now, is pretty much all theater, like Monday through Saturday. Because if you do theater programs or if you do take part in productions, your weekend is also mostly rehearsals. I was not an actor. I was never an actor. I never enjoyed being up front in productions. But all of high school, I worked on design and being stage managing, assistant to the director, doing backstage things. And that was majority of my extracurriculars in high school. I also did Model UN. I did Model UN starting middle school, so all of middle and high school. I did Model UN, which is really big here. I think maybe bigger here than in the States. Sometimes it feels like. And then the other kind of stats I gathered outside of that were academic, but outside of school were I studied French on my own. So I took all of the certificate exams. I completed B2 when I was in 10th or 11th grade, which is at the time the highest level you could get certified for while you were a minor. And that was part of my application as well. So my application, and I knew that I wanted to study something more in theater and film. So it was very heavily arts and theater related. I also did work with theater troupes in the city that were outside of school, so like professional theater troupes, working on like set and prop design, working backstage, doing that kind of stuff. So that's why I would consider myself a hardcore theater kid. There's nothing cool about saying that. But
I think you get more respect for it nowadays than you did back then.
Back then, it was like a really nerdy thing to do.
I think it still is fundamentally.
Fundamentally, and I don't think a lot of people like the theater kids at their high school for a good reason a lot of times. But that is like 90% of what I did. And I did not play any sports. I didn't do student council. Organized group activity in that area is really not my thing. But that is mostly what I was like as a student and individual, which you were kind of similar.
Yeah, I did theater too. I did theater in middle school. That's when I did acting. I was in musicals. I kind of in that way. I played Clouseau in 8th grade for The Pink Panther Strikes Back.
Nice.
That was fun.
That's a very fun production.
And I had a terrible French accent, which I think is borderline.
Maybe that was kind of the point.
Not great. Yeah, kind of. I think the director gave up after a while and found it funny instead.
Okay.
But around sophomore year in high school, I switched from being on stage to off stage, and I really enjoyed that a lot. So I did stage managing up until graduation. That was my kind of role in theater, which is basically just the director's like pet, more or less.
Sure.
But aren't you really kind of the director's task bot, like
right
to go do stuff and like write down notes?
You're her arms and legs.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And I think we shared the same director who's kind of spotty.
Yes.
Especially with logistics.
Yes.
But theater, that was a big part of what I did. And then I was in student council, and that was kind of my big thing, which I did all throughout high school. I eventually ended up being the vice president for the entire school. And so setting up stuff for homecoming, for prom, setting up initiatives, lunchtime pizza sales, fundraising, raising awareness, just being there for clubs especially. And at the end of my senior year is when I probably made my biggest contribution, which was to do a lot of restructuring and did elections. And so that was kind of what I did for student council. And I was also in choir. That's what I did. I did choir.
I learned that today.
Yeah, I was in. I did a lot of the regional like honors festival stuff, the Korean Honors Festival, the Asia Pacific Invitational. I also did something called AMI, which is like international schools around the world. So I got to go to a lot of cool places. I went to Abu Dhabi, I went to Berlin.
Wow.
And then Beijing, Shanghai. So I did choir a lot. And let me tell you, I'm not sure if it's like this now, but if you are a male willing to sing high parts in the tenor range, your competition is much less.
Right.
Because no one wants to be a tenor. It's not cool to be a tenor. It's cool to be a bass. But it's not cool to be a tenor.
Okay.
But if you're willing to put in the work.
Would you say it's like a shoe-in?
It's not. I mean, you have to still.
You have to be able to carry a note.
Yes. But you can do that.
Okay.
I think anyone is trainable to sing and hold a note and a pitch. It's mostly about confidence too.
Okay.
One of the harrowing things, if I go back to my recordings, is that because tenors are kind of in the middle, and I'm not on tall side, so I was in the first couple rows. Our school is mic'd up where the mic is in the center, and you could hear me predominantly in a lot of the mixing concerts. So in the mix in the concerts. So I never go back and listen to them because it is harrowing to me.
Because it's so much you.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's too much me.
Okay. That makes sense.
Outside of that, I did a couple smaller things. I was in NHS National Honor Society. I was in the math club for some reason. I think they wanted a guy to do work for there. But that
You
was
were
kind
a
of,
guy, you did work.
yeah.
Yeah.
They knew I would show up and I would do my task instead of not, doing something else. So that was kind of what I did for extracurriculars. And then my standardized testing. We can talk about that.
Sure, we can talk about that. You took ACT.
I took the ACT.
I took the SAT. I took the 2400 SAT, which we briefly have talked about before. But I don't even remember exactly what it is I got. I know it was around 2300. It was 2200, maybe 2270, around there, which would maybe be like 1550 plus, 1500s plus definitely now.
Was that considered like the threshold for get this score?
Back in our day, the kind of consensus was if you get 2020, you get 2250 plus, it won't be an issue on your application. So after that point, it's kind of nominal the better you do. And 2250 plus, you can kind of apply to any school.
And the 2250 equivalent for the 1600 scoring would be around like a 1520?
I would think so, 1520, 1530. So it was probably around there, maybe a little higher. I don't know if there's an exact conversion. Because we also had 3 different sections. It's scored entirely different from the digital SAT now. So that's ballpark.
How many
where I
times did you
was.
take the test?
Twice.
Twice.
Yeah.
To your score?
Just twice. Yeah. I took it twice and then I got the score I needed and I stopped doing it. I think I was done my junior year.
How was your prep process for that?
So I started in spring of sophomore year, and then I studied all through, like quite intensely through summer before my junior year started, and then I took one more exam in the fall of junior year, and I was pretty much done. I think kind of what was specific for me was that I was always a reader, so I didn't really need to learn reading very much. Back in our day, back in my day, but back in our day, vocab was a lot harder on the SAT, and so there was some of doing that over the summer. I am not I'm not a STEM student, but I've never had an issue with math. I just don't enjoy it very much. So SAT math was never an issue. The other thing was I don't know if you are in the same boat. We are part of the generation that had to take subject tests. And so we studied for SAT 2C math, which was far more difficult than regular SAT math. So I was already set for the math section. So for me, just being a heavy reader, prepping for SAT was a lot easier. The only thing is I was a very high anxiety student, and so I just needed to take it twice to make sure that I could perform to like my best capability. But
what tips would you have for students who have a lot of test day anxiety?
So I think the reason I talk so much about skill set, so I teach SAT the way I think I would like to be taught SAT, and so I'm a very high achieving, high anxiety individual. And so I really like skill sets that are kind of like if nothing works out, I don't understand anything, I have kind of a skill under my belt that I can kind of whip out and use. And I think that was helpful for me. Like I had learned a certain skills for if a question is asking this, I know what to look for in a passage. I know where to look for, or I know where to read in a passage. Same for math. I know if I see certain buzzwords, I know that this is what they're asking. And it's kind of having like an automatic system.
Some insurances.
Yeah. And it's best if you can read and understand things and solve things on a standardized test. But a lot of times, for me and a lot of students that I teach, you'll read a passage and you won't understand. And instead of being like, oh, I didn't get it the first time, let's go back and read more, you end up being like, oh my gosh, I spent all this time, I read it, I didn't get it, what's going to happen? Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And you just end up wasting more time. So it's always great to have kind of like a backup. This is what I do when I don't understand a passageway to attack a question.
And did you have a choice between the SAT and the ACT?
When I was taking it, the ACT wasn't taught as much. I think I was familiar with it. I know there were a couple students who were much more STEM oriented, who were much more comfortable with having a science section, who sought out to take the ACT. But back in my day, it was much more the norm to take SAT. Yeah.
Okay, so I took the ACT.
You took the ACT.
And I took it primarily because I'm a fast test taker.
Right.
My issue is never time. My issue is always discipline and stamina.
Okay.
And I get impatient. And I will just solve a question and have 100% certainty at that time that I'm correct. And then I'll go back and I think, what was I thinking?
Right.
But I knew that time wouldn't be an issue. And I enjoy that kind of fast-paced style. So the ACT I naturally gravitated towards it. It took me 2 times as well, although I got the score I wanted the first time round. But the ACT has a super score thing. So I wanted a super score. So my first time I took the test, I started studying in the winter of my sophomore year. And I took my first test, I think in April or May of sophomore year, so right before the summer. I got a 34, and that was the score I wanted. I think still even a 34 is the score to get that will get your foot in the door for most of the top schools.
Right. It's not really an issue after that point.
Just get your 34 and get in and get out. I wanted a super score because I think schools like Chicago at that time took super scores, and so I wanted to get one score higher because it's easier to get a higher score if you're using your super score, which is the highest score in each section. I did surprisingly poorly on English, which is a section I usually should be good at because I'm also a reader. My issues are usually in the science section or the math section. But after a certain point for ACT math, you get to a point where you're able to consistently pump out a score. Science as well is mostly a reading section when you get down to it and you learn the techniques. So I never had an issue there. English, the reason why I had highest fluctuations is because, and I think a lot of students will relate to this, I never learned grammar formally. I just read. And I was a voracious reader, I read a lot, so I had a good feel for grammar, which is not necessarily a test-taking strategy for grammar.
It is not.
I should have paid more attention because I got good enough scores where I got complacent, and I was like, I don't need to learn about semicolons. I kind of know what they do.
Right.
But if you're not entirely sure, then in the edge cases, they will trip you up.
Which is kind of the difference between a 34 student and a 36 student. So I think if you have a really good foundation like you did, then you are fine taking the test and getting a high enough score. But if your aim is to get a perfect score or close to perfect score, then you probably need to learn the rules.
Be more disciplined about it than I was.
Yeah.
But I took it again, got the English section score I needed. And I took the essay as well at the time. I think it's very, very optional now. It used to be kind of not optional back then. You just kind of had to take it. But I got an 11 on the essay.
Yeah, we had a handwritten essay as well. That was not fun. So that was the thing. That was the other thing, which was on the 2400 paper SAT, the essay was always the first section. And it was an unseen prompt. And so I think for students with a lot of anxiety, that was like the worst. So you would open it up and then you would have to write on demand a new essay on the spot. And then after that section is over, you kind of have to reroute your brain and focus and take a lot of other sections. And we had a dummy section. That was the other thing that really threw people off.
Well, the essay was at the very end for the ACT.
That's nice.
And the reason why, not the reason why I took it. The reason why I took it is because I thought you had to.
Okay.
And I think nowadays you just don't if you don't have to, and it's not an issue.
Right.
But I think and this is like a very, very small consideration, I think your colleges do get your ACT essay.
Right.
They're able to have access to it. And so if there's ever a doubt about your English ability, they can go back and see that in test-taking conditions, you were able to write like this.
Right.
Which might be helpful.
Right. I think a lot of students, there are certain students who would definitely benefit from having that on their record. Because especially they know that you're writing in a time constraint, so the expectations are kind of different from like a personal statement on your Common App.
It's never going to move the needle, but it'll be a way for them to reaffirm the fact that you can write at a certain level.
Right, right.
Even though admissions officers are quite good at sniffing that out anyways.
Exactly, yes.
So how did you narrow down colleges?
Well, like I said, I was a hardcore theater student, so I knew I wanted to study something in theater or film.
Oh, so you were an art student, kind of.
I was I applied to college with the intention of being an arts student.
Which is a completely
completely
different
different-
process than a normal academic.
Exactly.
Let's talk about that first then.
Okay. So I went to NYU. I applied early and got into NYU. So NYU is the only school I formally applied to, and I went there. So I applied to Tisch, and originally Tisch being the School of Drama and Arts at NYU, and we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about our schools in a little bit, but just to focus on kind of the application process, NYU. Tisch specifically, you have to complete the Common App, so they follow the Common App, but then you have to send in a separate portfolio. Sometimes it's a portfolio, sometimes it's a proposal, sometimes there are supplement essays, depending on what your major is. So depending on if you want to be a cinema studies program, if you want to be in film or TV, if you want to do music, if you want to do performing arts, if you want to do acting, depending on what program you're applying to, the requirements are entirely different. If you are applying, I applied for the cinema studies program. That's what I was originally wanting to study. So cinema studies is slightly different from film and TV. It's for people who want to study more theory, film history, things like that in general. And so when you are applying for the cinema studies program, the application back in my day, because it was kind of a long time ago, was slightly different. But essentially, you have to write a resume, which kind of you want to detail any in-depth any activities you've done for like productions at school, productions outside of school, if you do things like stand-up or improv, anything like that. So there's a resume, and then there are specific supplement essays that they ask you to write about, which are kind of detailed around your kind of interests in film, and what are some like viewing experiences, and you're talking about things that moved you, things that make you think, or specific questions you have as an intellectual in the film space. I know now there are like video and audio prompts, which I don't remember having back in the day, but you have to there are like different prompts, and you have to write short stories and smaller essays. It's more like a portfolio of very short writings, like 1 to 3, maximum 3-page kind of essays or short stories, exposés, things like that. Unless you're applying to be a screenwriting major or like a directing major specifically, you don't necessarily have to hand in like completed works. There is like a small video, like getting to know me, that you have to film. I think that's still a thing. But other than that, it's not as artsy as I think a lot of people might expect. It's slightly different from going to like a visual arts school program, or something like that. So that was what my cycle was like. I was also, I got in early, so I just went to NYU, but I was also preparing in my cycle, applying as like a non-arts student to a lot of other schools. So I had the UCs on my list, and a lot of other East Coast schools, a lot of liberal arts schools.
How'd you choose your schools?
So one of the things that is kind of specific to me was my dad had this philosophy that we're from California, and if you are from California and you go to college in California, he has a philosophy that you never leave California. So we were very...
Which is the worst fate that could befall anyone.
It's not the worst thing that could happen to anyone. California is a great place to be.
I'm rolling my eyes
You
right
are
now.
rolling your eyes. But California is a wonderful place, but I think he was hoping that I would use college as kind of a time to explore what it's like to live in different places and get a different feel and learn to kind of experience different sides of America. When I first moved to New York, so I had actually never visited New York until I went to move in into my dorm. I had never been on the East Coast before. I had arrived for move-in day. So when I arrived, I did have this kind of culture shock moment of like, this is not the America I am familiar with. Like, this is a very different view of America than what I'm used to. And so I do agree that that was a really good experience for me. And so most of the schools on my list were on the East Coast. I was looking for a lot of schools that had great humanities programs, so research facilities and things as such was not really much of an issue.
Well, you mentioned that you applied to some schools as not a film/art student.
Yes.
What was the major or slash like direction you were going to go in?
Right. So, like I said, I was a really big Model UN student as well. So, I was mostly applying as international politics, international relations majors, which, if you are someone who graduated from an international school, high school, and you were slightly humanities oriented, was like very much the norm. I mean, even now. The other thing I do want to add as an aside is that when I was applying to college, most students applied undecided. It was not really a factor that influenced your application as much as it does today. And so a lot of the kind of intended major was more like an interest area that I have that was very flexible and malleable. And so we were less stressed about like, what am I going to say I want to study? And it was more like, here are also other schools that have programs that are maybe just more liberal arts or humanities oriented that I could also go to. I knew I wanted to be kind of in a city or close to a city. So I was looking at like Barnard and Columbia. I was looking at Chicago. I was looking at some schools in Boston. And then also a lot of UC schools, so definitely like Berkeley, UCLA, things like that. So those were all of the schools that were on my list. And actually, I don't think my list was even like properly completed or cemented because I was still in the midst of writing my applications when I got accepted early. So I kind of, it's like, I'm done. I'm good. I'm done. So yeah, so that was what my cycle looked like.
Also, quickly,
Yes.
rec letters.
Rec letters. So I did 4 years of stage managing with my teacher, who was also my IB theater teacher. So she wrote my main rec letter. I was also able to get one from an English teacher who I was particularly close with. I'm slightly different from you or Hannah, who we've also had before, because I was not that close with all of my teachers. I am kind of now, but was even more in high school, slightly socially awkward. And so I had certain teachers that I had gotten very close with over 4 years who wrote very nice things for me, and that was very helpful. The other thing I do want to say is if you are a student who is applying into an arts program, or if you're applying more humanities oriented, a lot of students ask whether they need to balance out their rec letters by like having like one core subject teacher, one like elective or extracurricular teacher, or should it be like one humanities and one like math or science teacher? I think that what's more important than that are the teachers that can say something quite significant about you, or who actually understand you and have something interesting to say. I think it's less interesting to say that this person was in a math class with me, and it's more interesting to be able to say what they did in a class or in an activity that you were a part of. So that's more important to think about. And that's, I think, why I chose those teachers and the rec letters I got.
I do think at least one of them should be at least tangential to the field of study that you're going to do.
I think that's definitely helpful.
Like, so for my rec letters, I just chose my English and my history teachers. I was close with both of them. I knew they'd be good writers, and they seemed to like me. I could have chosen my choir teacher or the director that I did stage managing under. I wrestled with it, but I think I wanted to be more academic anyways, and that wasn't a big part of my application. Theater or choir was not a big part of my application. It was mostly small supplemental stuff. And when I was crafting the overall narrative of my application, it didn't really speak to that. I didn't need someone to speak to that as much. It was mostly more about my academic strength.
Right.
So I chose English and history. And
right.
Those are fine choices, I think.
Right. If you feel like the qualities you want to highlight were sufficiently discussed by those teachers. I think
I
would be
also,
fine.
my counselor, I had and this is like, this is gonna sound like a rich kid thing, which it was. There's something called Discovery Week
Yes.
at our high school.
Yes.
Where for a week you go out and do something, usually outside the country, like service in Cambodia, or sometimes more sightseeing. Like sometimes go to Tokyo and like do like a food tour there. In my freshman year, I went to Nepal with my counselor. I didn't know at the time that they would be my counselor, but they ended up being my counselor, and so she could write about that experience, and so I felt very confident that she would be able to talk about me outside the classroom, anyways. And so it was those kinds of considerations that led me to choosing two academic rec letters, and it worked out.
Right.
I think. My college cycle. So, did you go on a college tour?
I did not.
Okay.
I had visited a lot of schools in California because I was home for like summer, and I did see UCLA. I saw USC. I saw Stanford. I didn't apply to Stanford, but I saw it. It was very beautiful. We saw Berkeley, but I had never been on the East Coast. Like I had never gone more east.
You never lived life. You never been in touch with history or culture.
Oh, okay. I mean, if you want to go there, do you want to go there? Do you?
I will pepper you, Jazz. But
Yeah,
anyways,
okay.
you've never been to the East Coast.
I had never been east of Arizona until I had moved in
So
to
it's
my
kind
dorm.
of a shot in the dark.
Yeah,
Okay.
but we are, I think, because of our background, kind of good at feeling like if you put me in an entirely different environment of like language and culture, like I think I'll be okay because
Yeah.
I've done it once before. I know it doesn't feel that way because we're ethnically Korean, but being placed here when you're from the States is a stark change even for Korean Americans. And so doing that once, when I was applying for college, we were kind of like, I think I could kind of go anywhere. Also, I really wanted to be in a really big pond and where kind of people didn't really know me. So where better to go than I've never gone before.
So my college shortlist my college shortlist making was a little different, where I did not have any real locational ideas because
Okay.
I probably was not going to go back to Denver, even though I love Denver, because most of the big elite schools are on the coasts anyways. I never lived in California, I never lived on the East Coast. And so my narrowing down came from two things. One was a college tour I did go on in my sophomore year, which when you're a sophomore, you still don't know where you are kind of academically, nor do you know what you want to do, nor do you know what kind of schools you want to apply to. So it's mostly me and my family, and mostly my mom and my dad going to the big schools because they wanted to.
Right. It's sightseeing.
Yeah, and at that point, my academics were not that good. I had a minor glow up academically in my junior year, which allowed me at that point to apply to some of the higher ranked
Nice,
schools.
nice.
But in my sophomore year, I wasn't all too great. But so we went to like all the big like Ivy League schools. We spent like 3 days in California, driving through UCLA, Berkeley, Stanford, and for me, and then maybe people who go on college tours, or if you're going to go on a college tour, keep this in mind. It is less of a matchmaking experience and more of a process of elimination. Because what happened is that instead of me being like falling in love with school, which maybe you go to a school campus and you're like, oh my God, I need to be here. For me, it was all like, these are all cool. Like I was like, oh, this is cool. Looks old, or like looks nice. So like, oh, that's a nice park. That's a nice main green. But I never really felt like super connected to a school. Northwestern actually was kind of cool because they had a beach. I was like, wow, they just have a beach. I was like,
That's
not
nice.
bad. And also, I like the city. I like the area. And if you go on the tours, like the tour guides will tell you all like the little fun quirks, like the historical stuff. If you ask them questions about transport or the airport, that's a big thing for international students, where the nearest airport is and how close it is to get there.
Direct flights.
Yes. Those little things you can ask them. I'd say definitely use your tour guides because they are there for a reason and they've answered every question under the sun. Just don't be too annoying.
Right.
But there are some schools that I cross off my list.
For what reason?
So I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Cornell's in the middle of nowhere. And I knew this.
Okay.
But I went there and it was really in the middle of nowhere. And
Ithaca is.
I still wanted to be at least somewhere near a major city, whether that was New York, Boston, or even a smaller city. Or even if it was like relatively not in like those big New England areas, but still like what's the capital of Virginia? Raleigh?
It's not Richmond?
I think it's Richmond. But I wanted to
don't
live
know.
near at least a big enough city because I lived
Right.
in Seoul and that's a big city and I didn't want to drive. That was a big thing. I did not want to have to drive. So I wanted a place that had at least okay public transport. I didn't really know that though, and that wasn't a big thing on my list. But in the middle of nowhere, like I went to Duke. Duke's in the middle of nowhere. Notre Dame's in the middle of nowhere, kind of. And then I didn't really feel too comfortable with those locations, so I didn't apply there. Another one was this is a core memory. I went to UPenn's campus and I went to the tour guide, like student admissions office, and they gave me a map. And then I was like, okay, thank you for the map. And then they turned over to like the big diagram, the big map, and they took out a marker, a Sharpie, and they started Xing out locations and say, don't go here. And
Because
of safety, because those weren't good streets at the time. Apparently, they've done a lot more renovations to make it safer, at least in the nearby area.
Okay.
But I was not very happy or comfortable with that. And so
That's
that was
kind of
big
a
thing.
red flag.
Yeah. I think that might have been my very personal experience.
Okay.
And I think it is going to be those small things that you personally experience or feel at campuses or talking with students that will make or break your decisions. But I did not want to apply to UPenn for like that reason only. And also, as an international student, even though I was very culturally American, guns are scary.
This is, yeah. I think students tend to overlook location when they make their college list, and almost everybody who, kind of we check back in with after they get accepted and start like freshman year, it's pretty much the most important thing.
Because you live there.
You have to live there. Students forget that you're not just going to a school, you're moving to a new place. So you have to be very comfortable with the idea of living there. And that should be a very high priority on how you cultivate your college list.
At least think about it.
Yeah.
Even if you're not really sure what you like or don't like, be aware of it as you go in, and at least you'll set expectations that aren't contrary to what you've believed.
Right. Like, do you need to live near like fast food? Do you need to be near like an airport? Like, are there certain things that are non-negotiables for you in terms of location?
So your cycle basically, so why NYU early?
I back in the day, NYU was kind of the best program for studying film. I also I was at a place where I didn't know if I wanted to study theater or if I wanted to study film. I was kind of in between things, and I also wondered if I would want to study literature. So I wanted to go to a school that had both a strong theater program and a film program. I knew that I wanted to be in a big city, so New York was a no-brainer for that. That's also partially why I looked at Chicago schools. But NYU has a wonderful program. Tisch is a wonderful program. I think there are other schools that have great programs, but I think it's really, if you're looking to go to U.S. University, you want to study film or theater, I think that there isn't really a program that can beat what Tisch has to offer.
It's in the middle of the cultural background of just being in Manhattan, New York.
It's so many different things, and we'll talk maybe a little bit about this later. But one, the faculty is absolutely amazing, and most of the faculty that I've encountered while at Tisch are people who are still in the field. So all of my professors were people in their day would work as producers or directors or marketers, and they would be actors or masters of their craft, and also teach on the side. They were also published authors. So they were still working, still in the field, still very active, very much had their fingers like on the pulse of what was happening in the industry today. And they were teaching students exactly what was going on and how to prep them for that. So that was the best thing about Tisch. And also the infrastructure is kind of it's beyond amazing. I think if you want to be a student and try to create things of your own, I think it's a wonderful place to be. And one of the other things that's great about being at Tisch and being in New York is there's so many other art schools or other kind of institutions for film and art where there are so many people to collaborate with all the time. And it's a wonderful community to be a part of. And for that reason, it's a wonderful program. I love that they have great studio classes for actually learning the craft. There's great theory-based classes. It's a really wonderful balance. It's a really great, I've always felt very safe about having different perspectives or kind of preferences for different genres and directors and styles. So overall, and I really picked up on that just from being able to read about the school, but even before I had seen anything of it. So that's why I had picked Tisch. And also, and it turned out to be true, I knew that NYU was a great school. If I decided to do something other than film, I would have a lot of options to do that. So that was a really good backup plan, and I definitely ended up using it. So that was nice that I had that.
Do you remember what you wrote in your essays?
I do. I wrote, so my personal essay for my Common App, so my personal statement, I wrote about, it was more short story-esque, but I wrote about working backstage. I wrote about it as, the core of it was that I felt like stories were people and they were keeping me company. They were kind of my friends and my colleagues throughout my 4 years of high school, and experiences of being backstage and kind of being in that environment and feeling like you are able to unpack what's happening to your experiences you have through those stories, and being able to be in conversation with them and to feel supported by them, supported by authors and thinkers and writers and actors from like decades or centuries ago. That was what my personal statement was about. I did also write kind of a nonfiction essay for my portfolio about Sailor Moon. So my Tisch essay was about Sailor Moon, because something that I love about Sailor Moon specifically is that the main character of Sailor Moon is always scared. She cries at least once every episode. She is not very brave. She's not very smart. She's not the strongest in the group. And she doesn't seem to possess the traditional qualities of a leader, right? Like, she's not really a traditional kind of leader of the group, the biggest shining star of, like, she's not like Captain America or Iron Man of the Avengers. But at the end of the day, she always ends up beating the bad guy. And I love that the whole point of the character was that you're scared and you can cry and you can not want to, but if you kind of hold on to this core set of values of like fighting for good, at the end of the day, you can get that done and you can be successful, and that there's so much power in that. And so as a high school student who was rather socially awkward, not the coolest, not very popular, that really struck a chord with me. And I really wanted to write stories that were like that. And I wrote a lot about writers or creators like Tina Fey, Mindy Kaling, who were kind of my idols at the time. I went through a phase in high school where I would listen to the audiobook of Is Everyone Hanging Out Without Me by Mindy Kaling, or almost every single day that I could recite it. But so I wrote about these influences and that I had picked up on and why they were significant to me, and what kind of storytelling I would want to do as a creator myself, or as a thinker myself, or what I was interested in, which is a really big part of the Tisch application. So whatever discipline you're applying for, it's really important to show, it's less important to show, look at all of the things I know how to do, and more like, this is the kind of artist I would like to become, and I would like to learn how to become. And I think that was the core of that essay. And I think it was cute. It was kind of fun, and I don't think a lot of people write about animation in general, like that kind of animation in general, especially like more than a decade ago, but also specifically Sailor Moon. Yeah.
I remember writing my essays because I don't remember a lot about it. Actually, wait, I want first to ask you, how did you get to that? Was writing essays easy for you? As you said, you were kind of reader-writer type.
Yeah.
Was it more finding the topic that was the issue?
I had a lot of difficulty finding what to write about in a way that was uplifting of myself.
Yeah, you were spoiled for choice.
That was I had a lot of topics. I had a lot of things I wanted to write about or put into words, but I had difficulty finding something that would put me down as an attractive candidate versus come across as like self-deprecating and like sad and like.
You do have to kind of sell yourself.
Yeah, you have to sell yourself a little bit, but most people who are applying to be like a theater or film studies major are not people who are like, unless you're applying to be an acting major, you're not like, I'm so great, I'm so wonderful, look at me here, please take me. So I had a lot of ideas, but I had to kind of find something that would be able to put me in a more positive light, and I did struggle with that a little, and so I kind of, this is not less true today. Back in the day, there were not a lot of Asian Americans applying to film school. Definitely the game has totally changed in the last decade. But back in the day, it was not the case. And so I thought maybe it might be more interesting for me to talk about other influences that I had. And once I started thinking about that, I leaned heavily into animation. And then I kind of stumbled across something that was already in me. I had found it. Once I found it, it was really easy for me to put it down into words. I wrote a lot in high school. It wasn't that hard for me. I think it was much more difficult to write the why school essays. And I think hopefully we'll talk a little bit more that might make that.
We can help you with at least 2 schools.
We'll help you with. Hopefully, the previous episodes have been helpful. We'll definitely give you some of the insider info on those.
So for me, I was a very typical high achieving academic extrovert social person. I wasn't like a cool kid, but I had a hand in a lot of these social groups.
You were definitely part of the community.
Yeah, I was very active. The PTA knew more about me than I knew about myself. Which is scary.
That's a little weird.
But I was very typical in that way, and so my essays did come from that kind of area. I think being able to not talk about yourself positively, that's a universal experience. This regardless of who you are or what kind of person you are, it's hard to sell yourself. It's hard to find those aspects and those qualities that you would think highly of yourself and think others would think highly of yourself. So a lot of times, try to go to like your friends and your family and ask them about things and run topics by them. A lot of times you try to strive towards a certain generic ideal that ends up being really generic, and anyone could write that essay. And then, so you want to go more specific. You want to dig a little bit more into who you are. For me, I wrote about, in my big Common App personal statement essay, about a time in the summer when I was putting together a like metal Lego set. So it wasn't Lego, but it's like just like metallic, like put together kind of DIY projects. It's for the Eiffel Tower. And it wasn't that itself that was the core of the essay, but it was more about this idea of doing things just for fun, for the love of for lack of a better term, love of the game. Just to do things for the sake of doing it, for
Without
the sake of
purpose.
Getting the experience and the task of having done it and feeling accomplishment in that. So it's kind of an academic curiosity. I will work very hard for you kind of essay. I kind of cringe reading it back because my sister is applying and I read it once and I was like, ugh. I think the more interesting essay I wrote was about an experience I had as a translator for, it was like a Euro-Asian parliamentary conference, and I found a role as a translator there. I did that for like a couple weeks in the summer, and I was a translator for the Armenian delegation, which was fine. But what happened was that there was a particular altercation when there was a bus that would go to the Blue House, which is the place where the president lives in Korea. Not now, but where the president usually is. And the delegations were supposed to go to the Blue House for a dinner, but they had to reserve spots ahead of time. And I don't think the Armenian delegation was not completely aware of this. So they had already booked one seat for them ahead of time, but the Azerbaijani delegation had 2 seats. And there is a conflict between the two that is quite tense and heated. And when the Armenian delegation found out that the Azerbaijani delegation would have one more seat, they refused to leave the bus or ride the bus until they would give them another seat, which was hard because of logistics and how everything was planned. It was not going to happen. But I remember them yelling and trying to communicate, and because I was one of the only people there who could speak English and Korean, it was me going from both of them talking to me to speaking as much best Korean I can to the White House aide the Blue House aide who's just in shambles and panicking and calling people as well. And so I was talking about how at that point it kind of felt like all these things I'd read about, these tensions and like in the news, it was very theoretical and very abstract. But in that moment, you can see how it actually spills over into something as small or something that seems as insignificant to me at that point, which was just a spot in a dinner. And it's like it feels like there's something very easy, it's just kind of whatever about. But it's an important political bargaining chip and tool and a display of power. And I wouldn't say it's petty, but it's still those small things in politics that flare up. And that was really interesting to me. And so I was a political science major student. And so I said that's kind of where I saw it happen in real life as a high school student the first time.
Right. I think that this is a really good distinction that different applications for different kind of programs need to have. Lots of liberal arts schools, especially like humanities-oriented schools, you want to write about things that you have done or experiences you have. If you are applying more for the arts, it's slightly more conceptual. It's like kind of how you think or ideas you have or values you have. So I think that kind of shows up nicely in how our essays were different for college.
And then I wrote another essay on Reddit.
On Reddit?
Because I was I was active for the 2018 World Cup. I was one of the match threaders.
Ooh.
To create match threads for the games itself and like updating inside the post, talking about like 28 minutes, like there was like a chance.
Nice.
And just being part of that community, wanting to give back to a community that I had always been very active in. That was kind of what I was talking about. I think that the prompt is just for the Brown application was something like talk about a place or a community you call home. Or not home, but you talk about a place or something that is part of your community.
That's very interesting.
So I wrote about that.
Yeah. That sounds like a really interesting take on that prompt.
And then I always say that the extra spice on my essay is that in 2017 I uploaded a 9-second video called Rhyming with Barney, and you can find it if you search up on YouTube right now in the search bar. Finish this video first, but then you can look up Rhyming with Barney, and the second or the third link. My face is just there. The channel's Joon. It's a meme video uploaded. I put it on, I think it's like YouTube Haiku or something like that, where it's like very short videos, and it blew up. And I think it was on like reaction channels. It was in a playlist back then called like Important Videos, and it got a lot of views that way. And it's kind of nice that I made a viral video.
It's very funny.
And so
you made me watch it.
For the more quirky schools, the ones that I knew were a little less serious and were willing to engage in that kind of shenanigans, I put it as like, there's like a link in the comment where it's like, would you want like your portfolio or like your art piece or something? I put it there as like a for fun thing.
I think that's cute.
And I say that's what got me over the edge. Probably not, but it's like a fun thing. So if you have like small fun things that are college admissions safe for work.
Right. Not technically related.
No, not at all.
But just safe. Like it's not something that is offensive. It's not something that would.
It just kind of displays kind of who you are, who you are a little bit. Like what do you do? It gives you a better insight into the character because it's hard to determine character from even a lot of essays and the resume and courses. But if those are small things that distinguish you,
right.
I'm hoping that in the circles, like in the Brown admissions team circles, like, oh, that the YouTube video guy or like the Barney guy. I hope that was brought up that way.
I think it probably was. I think that's a good way to be like memorable and like fun and like considered more interesting than maybe other applications. So that's definitely, I think that was probably definitely a plus for you.
My college cycle, I applied to Brown, which was the only Ivy school I did not go to in my college tour, which is kind of ironic. But
because you were going to see 4 years of it.
Yeah, but I applied Brown early. A big reason of that was open curriculum, and I had a lot of academic interests. I had a lot of interests. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be tied down, and so Brown was one of those. It's famously a school that allows you to discover and go through a lot of different things. They don't, they don't even call it a major. They call it a concentration, and there's less requirements per concentration. You can take class, pass, no pass, SNC we call it, and just kind of explore in a lot of different places. That's kind of why I did that. I also knew I wasn't a top 10 student at my school, so I probably shouldn't and didn't want to apply to like the Yale, Harvard, Stanford, Princeton tier of school. But I wanted to have a good shot, and so I applied to one of the lower Ivies, as you'd call it. But I wanted to do it regardless. And so my college cycle, I applied there early, but I also applied to UK schools. So I did a whole UCAS application. And the thing about UK schools is that it's a rolling decisions base. So
Right.
they admit students on a rolling basis. And so I had already gotten into UCL in like October. And at that point, then I was done because UCL is a great school. And
Right.
I told myself that if I could get into UCL or King's or what's the others like
LSE, did you
LSC,
apply?
yes,
Yeah.
I applied. They rejected me. But if I get into one of those schools, I was set. I knew that those are, and I had no real location, things like that. I didn't want to strictly go to the U.S. And so at that point, I decided why not just change my U.S. college lists to all reaches because I'd already gotten an offer from a school that I wanted to go to. So I changed all my. I originally had a pretty balanced college list. I think a lot of Boston schools because I liked the idea of Boston. I had BC on there, Northeastern on there, some Chicago schools. I think Northwestern, U Chicago. I applied to Chicago Early Action alongside Boston College, I think, and I actually got an interview offer to go to Oxford. So, and at this time, they allowed you to go there in person, and they had like a whole program if you wanted to do an interview there. So, in December, I got on a flight like right before midterms to go to Oxford. I slept in one of the like dorms. I did interviews. I bombed those interviews. I did terribly in those interviews. I knew I knew almost certainly I was not gonna get a return offer.
What went wrong?
I was underprepared.
Okay.
I did not. So you send a writing sample for a lot of UK schools, and I did not prep for it as hard as I should have, because they talked mostly about what I wrote in that essay and that like writing sample, and I had not touched it since I wrote it, and I should have studied on it more, and should have been able to talk more confidently about it. I got a little nervous.
Did you interview at all for U.S. colleges, or is it very different, the interviews for UK schools versus U.S. schools?
Well, the only interviews I did was for Oxford, and Oxford and Cambridge. I think they nowadays interviewing is part of the process, like very formal part of the process. I remember like one of the interviews was just I took like a test. They like put me in a library and they gave me like free response to questions. Okay, I guess they wanted to know how I thought about certain issues and things. I also applied for history and politics for my UK schools, and I don't think I was prepared to study history or politics.
Okay.
But
All right, that's fair.
yeah, I did not do any interviews for U.S. schools. Mostly because when I got accepted early, I did not have to do any more interviews because I was done. But I did do a video. I think Brown still allows you to send a video.
They do.
Optionally.
They do.
And I think my video was like kind of I edited the spirit videos for field day at high school. And so I had a little bit of experience editing videos. And so I think I made mine like a quirky who I am, and I think a lot of it had to revolve around what I did in theater. And so I kind of made like a behind the scenes-esque video of what it's like to be a stage manager at SFS. And that was kind of what I did for my Who I Am I video that I sent to Brown.
Okay. I mean, I'm sorry that.
No, but anyways, I came back from Oxford. I loved it anyways. I did all the touristy things in Oxford.
Okay.
So I was very happy about my time regardless.
Sure.
Came back. It was the week of midterms. I came back on a Sunday. The first midterm was Monday at like 10 a.m. At like 9:30 a.m. on that Monday, I got my acceptance to Brown, and I was done. And
You were like,
I went to the midterms doing nothing. And
Okay.
I did try because that's the type of student I am. I'm like a tryhard. But I knew I was done with my cycle. There's actually a little bit of like a snafu because my counselor wasn't sure, like if Oxford said yes, if I could break my U.S. early decision, because it is binding. But is it binding for all schools or is it binding for U.S. schools? We never had to cross that path because I did get rejected from Oxford. But we had a very stress-free cycles relatively.
Right.
I think some students, it comes down to like the final day.
Right.
Like Michael.
Right, like Michael. I think you and I got accepted a couple days before winter vacation started. So in December I was accepted. So I knew quite soon that I was set and I could coast
Yeah.
for the rest of senior year, which I definitely did. Which is also should be good motivation for you to really motivate, like apply yourself for the first 3 years. And then senior year will be a lot more chill and relaxed, which is definitely much more fun.
In the weeks coming, we will have experts talking about the college apps and the essays and cycles
College
and
lists.
numbers and college lists. This is just our personal subjective experience, just to kind of maybe put you at ease to tell you what a cycle can look like.
Right.
If you want more expertise about your particular situation, we will have videos on that coming up in
Yes.
September, I want to say.
Yeah, throughout September as the supplements go live and the Comment app and UC app go live, we'll have our episodes up about writing everything that has to do with applying to colleges, and those will be hopefully very helpful. Yeah.
And now we will give you information to write in your Y-Brown/NYU
Yes.
options.
Why you should go to the schools we went to.
Those supplements. I think we both went to schools where it's kind of a given why you'd want to go. It's like it's kind of obvious.
Right, you don't really need to fish around for what are the advantages
Yes.
of that school. They have very
They're
marketed.
both top 20 schools. No matter what you do in those schools, you will have a good time. They will usually at near the top of their fields. Both in pretty good locations in New England.
I did not say anything. I did not insinuate anything.
You laughed. You laughed.
I did.
Providence is in New England. Rhode Island is in New England.
It is. It is in New England. It is in New England.
I'm glaring.
It's not a bad place to be. Not
Okay,
at
well,
all.
let me tell you about Providence first.
Yeah, why can you sell us Providence?
It's a cozy, mid-sized city. It's
Okay.
not gigantic like Boston or New York, but there's still a lot to do. The good thing about Providence, the big thing that I say is that it is one of the foodie capitals of the U.S. In any list you see, great food. There's a big variety of food. There's a range of food, and there's really nice restaurants. And there's a story that the Italian mob used to run out of Providence.
Okay.
A lot of Italian mobsters used to be there, and so
Okay.
they would set up Italian restaurants for money laundering
As a
purposes.
front.
Yes.
Okay.
But they didn't care about their margins, so it ended up being really good Italian food.
Ah.
And once the mob started to die down and they stopped, in organized crime, they just became really good restaurants that had great reputations, that had really high quality ingredients and made really nice pasta. So there are a lot of great pasta and pizza places.
That's
in
really
Providence.
interesting. I've never heard this about Providence.
It's one of the fun facts. Like if you hop into an Uber enough times, someone will tell you about this.
This seems like an actual advantage to being in Providence, though. Like that
Yeah.
seems like a really good selling point.
Also, a pretty walkable city, I would say.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, very much so. I like jogged around downtown, and of course, it's like a little dangerous, but it's a lot safer than you'd think. And I never needed to drive. I never felt like I needed to drive to get around Providence or campus, which is a huge thing. Brown is also a very walkable campus. It's only, I think, from edge to edge, it'll take you like 15 minutes.
Okay, that's really nice. So Providence, great place to be.
Yeah, and also very close to Boston and New York.
Right.
Relatively, at least. There's the Providence Amtrak station to Boston is literally an hour, and then from Providence to New York, if you get like a Greyhound bus, it's like 3 hours, which is not bad
Not
for like
bad.
a weekend or like a 3-day weekend. If you want to just go up there, it's brilliant, and it's also a way to get away from big city too. If you want to be in a smaller place, I think there is a little bit of reputation of the Brown bubble because Brown is literally on top of a hill. So
Okay.
you have Brown here on the hill, then you have the hill, and then you have downtown.
Oh, okay. So it's kind of closed off from the rest of Providence, the campus.
You can always get there. It's just a downhill walk. It's not very far. It's like 10 minutes.
Okay.
And RISD is on the hill.
Okay. Rizzy's on the hill.
So it's like a gradient. You have downtown, you have the art students, and then you have the Brown students.
Nice.
So that's kind of how I view the city. It's always like you go up for a campus and you go down for downtown.
Okay. Do you want to try selling us Brown? Do you really need to?
That's part of it.
Other than it being like an IV.
Right. You have the distinct advantages of an alumni network, of the prestige, of the name value, of course. The big thing that you already know, and everyone knows, the open curriculum. Very few requirements. There's a writing component that you have to do twice, once in your first 2 years, once in your last 2 years. And then in my time, it was called DAP, but it's like a diversity and racial inclusion requirement where you have to take at least 1 or 2 courses that talk about or deal with or discuss race in usually a disparities or a way that gives you better perspective on racial issues in the U.S. or worldwide. But outside of that, you can take whatever the hell you want, pretty much. You have physics students taking archaeology courses. You have archaeology students taking math courses. You have math students taking Egyptology and Assyriology courses. We have one of the best Egyptology courses because we're one of the only schools that has Egyptology. And there are a lot of fun courses at Brown, and it's very much a culture of if you email a professor because you want to take a course, even though you don't have the requirements for it, as long as you're willing to prove that you have at least some background,
Some
and
proficiency.
you are dedicated, they will usually let you in.
Wow.
Even grad courses.
Okay. Do you think that's possible because you're more of a mid-sized school that you have that flexibility?
Very much so. And the faculty at Brown are dedicated to teaching. They are forced to teach. It's kind of one of those things.
Define forced.
So I say forced and more like Brown only hires faculty that want to teach, as
Okay.
opposed to places maybe at larger schools where
Like
research,
NYU.
yeah, where like you have leading people in their field because they do research and they are primarily focused on research, and so your classes might be more led by grad students or PhD students. Brown never has that. The faculty are there to teach, and they love teaching, and they love interfacing with students. And so they're very available, they're very open, and that's one of the things that I think allows me to connect a lot more with the people that are teaching the courses.
That's really nice.
They're very excited to teach. And student to faculty ratio is a bit of a weird number because it can be manipulated in a lot of different ways. But I think that at Brown, if you get to the upper level seminar courses, and not even upper, like mid-level seminar courses in almost every department except the really big ones, you will get to classes that are like 20 people, 25 people to a professor, which is really good.
Okay. In terms of NYU, I think one of the best parts of NYU, and something about my kind of time at NYU that we haven't discussed yet, which is also partially why it took me so long to graduate, which is I ended up transferring out of Tisch into the College of Arts and Science. So I was at Tisch for about a year, and then I figured out I don't really want to study cinema studies. I don't really want to be a writer. I thought I wanted to professionally write. I think about a year in, I knew that I was not really cut out to write as a career. That's not just how I wanted to live my adult life. And so I decided to transfer. I wanted to stay at NYU, so I transferred into the College of Arts and Science. And I was able to kind of take a bunch of intro and 101 courses in like humanities. And I ended up graduating as an economics major, and I also did a minor in politics. So that's what I mostly studied for the latter half of my time at NYU. And one of the things that I love about our school is that NYU has a lot of different departments, a lot of different schools. So we have Tisch, which is the arts school. We have College of Arts and Science, that's basically most of your humanities and social sciences. We have Tandon, which is the School of Engineering. We have Stern, which is the business school. We also have Gallatin, which is our individualized study program. So all of the different schools have a super specialized kind of breadth of discipline, and the faculty there and the programs there are built around that discipline. So Tisch is built around just teaching the arts. Tandon is really built around studying engineering and the sciences. So I really like that all of the different schools have a specialization. They are focused on one area, but as an NYU student, you're given a lot of flexibility across those different schools. So even after I transferred into the College of Arts and Sciences, I was able to continue studying, taking some film courses at Tisch. Tisch also has a wonderful program called the Open Arts Program, which is open to any NYU student. You're able to take a lot of different courses in film and theater and theory classes and more kind of application or studio classes you can take, which is really wonderful for you to kind of indulge all of your curiosities.
I think this is also something to mention about like US versus UK.
Yeah.
Where in the UK, it's very program-based.
It's
You'll
definitely-
heavily focus on your program and your area of study. And I'm sure there are opportunities to get involved academically in other places, but that's not the norm.
Right.
In the US and a lot of colleges, this also depends on the college.
Right.
But generally, there's more of a liberal arts feeling.
Yeah, there's definitely more encouragement for you to you definitely need to focus on a single major or single concentration, but there's definitely everybody is encouraged to try out different things, try out electives, and NYU also has a lot of really specific kind of niche courses. Like one of my favorite classes that I took was sociology in East Asian media. So it was a course in media, but it was really a sociology class, and it was specifically about East Asian media. So it was how East Asian media is produced and consumed, and kind of the sociological analysis of why that is the case, which is like an intersection of sociology, anthropology, history, economics, film, kind of all of those things in one. And it was like one of those courses where I was sitting in class and I was like, I can't believe this is school.
Sometimes also in these like these higher tier schools, you see people like really famous. Like I only said this, I remember this one course where it was co-taught by Jim Yong Kim.
Ooh.
Former World Bank
Really?
president.
Yeah.
He'd come in and like sometimes Zoom, sometimes in person to teach. I just remember that being really cool. And like
Yeah.
just having the opportunity to take that course. And
Yeah.
also like he held office hours. Like I
Right.
talked to him one-on-one. That was
Yeah.
kind of cool.
One of my that's really interesting you say that, because one of my favorite books that I read in high school was called The White Man's Burden by William Easterly. It's a book in economics. It's about kind of like social infrastructure and how like UNOs and NGOs operate or should operate. And I went to New York. I mean, I was at NYU and I saw him in an elevator, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's the guy that wrote that book that I read, and I can't believe we're standing in the same elevator now, because he teaches at NYU. I think he still does. So definitely there are some like wonderful faculty. There are wonderful programs and classes that you can
the
take.
head of public health, the head of the public health school at Brown, Ashish Jha, was I think head of the coronavirus response for the White House
Really?
during the time. So I think he was appointed head of School of Public Health, and then he immediately left to
go
help the coronavirus
to deal with
situation.
COVID. Okay.
And then he came back.
All right. Oh, that's yeah. So there are a lot of and I think this is also a really great point to write about in your why school essays. If there is something specific you're interested in, if there's any like notable faculty, I mean, don't do like a random Google search just to like write about
No.
something. But if there is something you are interested in, or something you have read, or something you're kind of keeping your eye out for, and you know that there's some connection with the school, that's a really wonderful topic to write about. If I'm just thinking off the top of my head, NYU has also a really great law school. A lot of the undergraduate courses that are like in politics and law are also really great. The economics program at NYU is wonderful. Because you also studied. No, you did not study economics.
No,
You studied politics.
I studied. Well, here's the thing.
Here's the thing.
The open curriculum is originally designed so that students in one concentration, we call them concentrations but majors, are able to take courses in a variety of different programs and courses and concentrations.
All right.
I did my own thing with the open curriculum.
Okay.
Where I decided to, because each concentration has less courses than a traditional major in other colleges, why not take advantage of that and get a couple degrees? So at Brown, I studied international and public affairs, public health, and computer science.
It's a lot of different
As a
things.
triple major, triple
Right.
concentrator, which I think is getting banned.
Is it?
I think they're no longer allowing it. But I used it in my own way because I wanted to study deeply into those three things.
Right.
And so,
and you're really kind of curious about the intersection of those things.
Yeah, I found an intersection, but I just really liked to broaden my horizons a lot because I do enjoy talking about things with people, which is very broad, but it's because I like to have common links. So whether it's a pre-med student or an economics student or an engineer or a philosopher, I have something to dig into with everybody. And I think that I enjoy being in that position. So being able to talk about Python, but also being able to talk about the UN gives me a broad scope to dig in. I love like my backpack of conversation topics. It's quite deep.
Right. You wanted a range.
Yeah.
Okay.
It also looks good on a resume.
Sure.
I
Definitely.
also have a bachelor's of arts in computer science, so I'm a little bit of a Mickey Mouse computer science major.
Okay.
But I can kind of code in Java. I wrote in C. So
You have a foundation for it.
it's a little bit stolen valor, but
Okay. All right.
I'm taking that to the bank.
Okay.
You want to talk about the clubs you were in?
clubs. Did you do a lot of club?
So welcome to Show and Tell with Joon. I want to talk to you about a couple of things that I did when I was in college.
All right.
This is a jumper, crew neck that has the logo for UCS. UCS standing for the Undergraduate Council of Students, which was the student government body, that I was in at Brown. Student government was something I did all 4 years. I got a little tired of it, but it was very memorable and a very big part of it where I met a lot of great people. I eventually ended up doing elections. I was the elections director in my senior year, and I met a lot of great people there. A little bit of a high stress, intense kind of situation and place to be, but I think it was a great experience for me. So student government.
Next artifact.
On my laptop, you'll see that I have a lot of stickers. I have have Pikachu here, which is not related, but these stickers have CR on them, which is the logo for the Critical Review. And the Critical Review is a organization that conducts student-made editorialized reviews for courses at Brown. So if you are a student at Brown and you want to know what computer science 101 is like, and you're thinking about taking it, you'd probably read a review on the Critical Review for that. That's why if you look at Brown, Rate My Professor, it doesn't really exist because we do that for them. So what we do at the end of each semester is we'll send surveys to students. They'll fill them out. We'll get them back. And then using those surveys, we have writers and editors, and I was part of the executive editorial team to put those all on a website, to edit them, look through them, synthesize them, so that it's a resource for students to take classes in.
That's really helpful.
And then I don't have anything for this, but I was part of student theater at Brown. I remember wearing a hoodie from high school that had stage manager on the back of it. And while I was walking through the club fair, one of the upperclassmen grabbed my hoodie, dragged me, and said, "We need you," because they needed a stage manager. Which is how I ended up doing stage managing in my first year.
Okay.
Then COVID happened. But then afterwards, I found a lot of fun and a lot of joy being in production, where I did a lot of finances.
Okay.
So organizing the budget, getting show rights, talking about what kind of shows we're going to do this year, how we're going to organize the budget, telling people to submit receipts, because if you submit receipts more than 2 weeks after you purchase, we can't get the tax reimbursed. A lot of minor stuff, but I enjoyed really being in the minutia of being a part of how a production gets created.
Made. Yeah.
Without having to commit that many hours.
That's really interesting. So that's, I think, maybe something that is really great about Brown. Is that it? Is that?
I was also in the gospel choir.
Okay.
Shout out Harmonizing Grace Gospel Choir. They allowed me to sing because I actually tried out for the choir. I didn't make it.
Okay.
And that was kind of sad for me. But then I went to Harmonizing Grace because they didn't have auditions, and it ended up being a really vibrant community. I really enjoyed being in that kind of area, and also when Harmonizing Grace kind of died during the pandemic because a lot of the members left, and it's kind of hard to have a choir group over COVID. I was there to kind of help set it back up and prop it back up and integrate it with the Protestant chaplain, the Protestant chapter at Brown's. Now, I think the Harmonizing Grace right now does worship for the weekly Protestant service, and that's how I kind of kept it alive, and I'm proud of that.
That's nice. That's nice. One of the reasons I really liked NYU and I applied to NYU is because you could get away with not doing any of that. So kind of because my high school experience was something very specific, I was very big on going to a school where I didn't have to really be part of the school community. Like that was not going to make or break my success during college. And so what's wonderful about NYU is there definitely is a community. There definitely are lots of clubs that you could take part in. But you can definitely choose not to do that. And instead, I did a lot of my extracurriculars off campus. You can still do a lot of that through the departments at school and find opportunities. But most of what I did outside of class was off campus. So I did kind of volunteer work as teaching and tutoring at a French-English bilingual charter school in New York. I did lots of church stuff kind of on my own personal time. I did some theater when I first joined the College of Arts and Science because I thought maybe I would want to continue doing that. And there was an economics review that I was part of for a little bit to write in, but you don't really have to do a lot of club work in college at NYU. And
you absolutely do not have to do that, Brown.
Yeah.
I went ham, but
you really enjoy that.
I liked being part of it. A full Google Calendar is bliss to me.
Right. I really enjoyed that I could be in an environment where I could say, oh, I don't do any of that, and it would not be thought of as weird or kind of too introverted or anything like that.
I do think it's great that Brown has a lot of clubs. We have a lot of student organizations, and we have some unique ones. We have a cappella groups both for Disney songs only,
Ooh.
and also for sea shanties. We have a pirate a cappella group.
You only sing.
They only sing like sea shanties and like pirate related songs.
Okay.
And they had like dress up, and they're really. It looks like a lot of fun.
It sounds fun. Sounds like people you'd want at an event.
Yeah, they performed at like family weekend and all that.
Yeah. Are there? Okay.
I'm trying to think of more.
You're
actually.
trying.
Yeah, I tried.
It's been a while. It's been a while. So it's been a while for me too.
There's a Taylor Swift club.
There is. Yes, I saw a video of the Taylor Swift club at Brown reacting when the Midnight's album dropped. Like they had an auditorium and everybody like listened to it together.
I forget what it was called. It was after song lyric, but
It sounds amazing. Like
okay, now it's coming out to your Swiftie.
that sounds amazing. Like I would have joined that. But
There's a very robust club sports program there at Brown as well. So if you're not like wanting to commit to varsity level, but you still want to be athletic, you still want to be active, great club sports. Also a great intramural scene. So I did intramural soccer and basketball some years. That was fun. So there's a thing called the Sci-Li Challenge. The Sciences Library is one of the biggest buildings on campus and one of the biggest buildings in Providence. And you say that the best view of Providence is at the top of the Sci-Li because you cannot see the Sci-Li. And there's something called the Sci-Li Challenge where there's a lot of things about it, but I think the most popular one is you start on the first floor and you take a shot going up every floor in the emergency stairwell. And you start at the top floor and you go down and you see how far down you can get. There's something called the Ratty Challenge where the Ratty's a dining hall. It's called Ratty because I think back in the day it was infested with rats. It's very clean now, but it's a beloved old dining hall. You stay there when it opens. You start when it opens at 7:30 and you stay there until it closes at like 9:30. And you just stay there the entire day. The Ratty sit-in. There's something called the Naked Donut Run.
okay.
The Naked Donut Run.
Is that what it sounds like?
It's exactly what it sounds like, where during midterms and final seasons, the Naked Donut Run organizers will tell you certain floors in the library that they will do the Naked Donut Run. So you don't have to be a part of it. You don't have to see it. But it's Brown students who are naked giving you donuts.
Nice.
That's it. When we have spring weekend, that's like our fun concert time. My senior year, we had Ethel Kane, Remy Wolf, Jid came. That was a lot of fun. We have like other events, ADOC, a day at College Hill, a night on College Hill. Like that, I think a night in college is dance. A day at College Hill is high school students coming and we house them and you can like shadow students, see what Brown is like. But it's a lot of collaborative, weird, fun people at Brown, I'd say. We're known as the Ugly Ivy, but I think we have a lot of personality to make up for it.
It's very honest.
But we're a very happy group of students. I think, you look at like the happiest people in college, and Brown is always up there. And it's because there's a lot of freedom and there's a lot of great social circles. You don't have to be part of like Greek life or frat life in order to get about and have fun. There's a lot of inclusive spaces for a lot of different types of people. It's just a very open-minded group of individuals at Brown, I'd say, and very passionate too. You'll find clubs for everything from activism to Taylor Swift to foods. I think there was a cheese club.
Nice. I think NYU, I don't want to make the positives of NYU seem more minuscule, but off the top of my head, so our campus is centered around Washington Square Park, which is beautiful, and once it gets warm, everybody's laying down on Washington Square Park. That's where all the TikTokers are that are in New York anyways. There's a really great dosa cart in Washington Square Park.
Oh, yeah?
They have best dosas, and if you call ahead of time, you can reserve yourself samosas, which are also really delicious. The dosa cart on Washington Square Park was my favorite place to eat at school. The other thing is our library, Bobst Library, has a wonderful view of the Empire State Building. So if you want to pull an all-nighter, you might as well pull an all-nighter with a view of the Empire State Building. It's beautiful. People come. There are so many tour groups that will come into the lobby and like visit, and it's for students it's depressing, but it has a great view of the city, and it's really wonderful. And the campus is all around kind of lower Manhattan, and then Tandon is in Brooklyn, and it's really beautiful parts of all of Manhattan or New York. One of the benefits I think maybe some people don't know is if you are a student at NYU, you can buy tickets to events in New York through the NYU Ticket Center, and you can buy tickets to sporting events and like musical productions and plays at a discounted rate. It's
That's so nice.
It's like half the price.
That's so good.
So I would watch musicals. I mean, they're not the best seats, and you have to go on like a Tuesday or Thursday, but they're like $40 to go watch Broadway events. Or I watched so many Knicks games when I was there, and you can pretty much get into anything at any point in time.
That's wild.
It's so cheap, and it's kind of one of the ways that NYU really encourages students to take advantage of the cultural capital that is in New York City, and they make it really accessible for all of their students. The other thing that I really loved, which is kind of a nerdy thing that I really loved, is if you are at NYU, you can gain access to any library of most institutions in New York. So you're more than free to go into any library in Columbia, Cooper Union, any of the other schools, any of the SUNY schools. You have full access to all of their material. So you have like this wonderful trove. The single library at NYU is not as big as like maybe Harvard or Yale, but you have all of the resources kind of at your fingertips, and you can have them delivered to the NYU library as well.
We have the same thing as well. There's a handshake of libraries.
Exactly.
That all you can get materials like we don't have it.
But we can get it for
Stanford
you.
has it.
Yeah.
And we'll get it to you within 2 days. Like,
Yeah.
crazy.
It's
sure,
amazing.
I'll take it.
So it's definitely really a well-connected institution. It has a lot of resources if you know where to look and who to ask for. One thing I do want to say is I had the best professor. My first intro to macro and micro professor was literally the best professor I had. I mean, I think the best teacher I've had in my life, which was Professor Lieberman, I think he's still at NYU in the econ program. And he, you go to office hours, you have some wonderful professors that will like sit with you and answer questions, and they will not give up on you no matter how stupid you are today. So shout out to Professor Lieberman, but it's a really great school. I think maybe the academics of NYU gets underplayed a lot, but there are definitely wonderful faculty and resources there if you are academically ambitious, but you also want to do it in a city and you want to kind of like live off campus and be part of kind of the cultural zeitgeist of America.
If you want to be academically ambitious, but you're afraid of getting bad grades at Brown, you can pass no pass every class. We call it SNC. Haha.
That's really
It's
great.
so nice.
It's really, yeah.
Because when I picked up my computer science degree, I'm not a STEM person at all. There are some classes where I knew I would struggle and it'd hurt my GPA, even though at Brown you do not calculate a GPA. They do not calculate a GPA ever, and they don't talk about it as a thing that they recognize, but you calculate it yourself.
Right. So, I mean, Brown and NYU both great schools.
Absolutely.
If there are any questions, like anything specific that we maybe haven't talked about, that anybody has questions about, we could definitely answer those, touch on those in the comments, anywhere else. If you want to email us or check in with us on any of our socials, we're definitely more than happy to do that.
Okay, question.
You
have a theoretical high school mentee, really wants to go to NYU, do the same thing that you did.
Okay.
What is the one thing that you tell them to write in their why NYU that is like a unique little thing?
So you mean the same thing? I'm assuming we're talking about the economics program.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. The economics program, the really great strength of the economics program at NYU is that a lot of schools have economics majors split into theory or policy, but NYU, because we also have Stern, which is a really wonderful business school, and also we're in New York City, it has a really great emphasis on policy-based economics. I know a lot of other schools have wonderful theory-based programs, but economics as NYU is super strong in studying economic policy, especially like international economics and like public economics as well. And so a lot of the courses are really built around giving you a skill set that you can use when you graduate. It's not just understanding kind of the theoretical concepts and the mathematical concepts behind it, but it's really for someone who is looking to apply this degree immediately out the door as you graduate. And the program also has really great work, like research work, and also kind of internships you can do while you're a student as well. The department is kind of really great about helping students do that.
One thing that I might say, which I didn't do, but I think is something to recognize, that at Brown we have something called an independent concentration, where if you don't have if you have something you want to study that's not traditional, it's not just economics, it's not just political science, it's not just history, but you want to specifically do storytelling or evil studies. I don't know what that is, but I remember reading about it. You can do an independent concentration where, using the classes at Brown, you can make your own academic curriculum.
Right, you curate your own program.
Exactly. You can be really in touch and leading what you want to study. And you can even hire, I think, outside professors or other people in the discipline. That also counts towards credits to doing that. And so I'd say if you have an idea, especially academically, what you want to do, that's something you can get in touch with and really take advantage of, while also still taking the numerous other classes at Brown.
Right. And NYU, you can do that by applying to this Gallatin School of Individualized Study. It's pretty much the same thing. So there's a whole different school to do that. Yeah, that's a really great way for students who know what they want to study.
Also, East Coast, Best Coast.
That doesn't even rhyme.
It does. Coast, East Coast, Best Coast. Come on.
West and best. That's the rhyme. Yeah.
Okay, quick thing. I love the East Coast. You get all 4 seasons. It's great. You get the winter and you get the summer.
Okay.
And you get the fall. You're not convinced.
No.
Do you not like the weather?
I mean, no, I like the 4 seasons.
Providence Providence winters are great, and summers are humid as hell.
You know what? I don't think that today is the day you will convince me that Providence is better than the West Coast.
Maybe one day.
Maybe one day.
But not this episode.
Maybe next week.
But thank you for tuning in for this episode of TheHagwon After Hours. If you have any other questions, like Deanna said, we're more than happy to answer, especially this time when your supplements are coming around and you're finishing your college apps, when you're stressing about it. We're here to both reinforce and soothe
Yes.
all your concerns and anxieties. But thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Bye.